Welcome to Vacuum Wars and to our review of the Ecovacs T30s robot vacuum. This latest release from Ecovacs is in the mid-level price range, so it's technically not Ecovacs' new flagship. The X2 Omni still seems to be their most expensive robot vacuum, but in our tests over the past few weeks, we found that the T30s outperformed the X2 Omni in many ways, and so the T30s is kind of like getting an Ecovacs flagship robot vacuum at a reduced cost, but with a few notable drawbacks, which I'll talk about in this review. So, links in the description, and let's get started. First, the basics. The T30s comes in 3 different packages. The T30s Black, which is the one that I bought, the T30s Combo, and the T30s Combo Complete. The latter two include an onboard cordless stick vacuum, with the difference between those two being that the T30s Combo Complete version comes with a wand attachment as well, so that it can be used like a stick vacuum, like for floors, where the T30s Combo only comes with the handheld unit as well as attachments for above floor cleaning jobs only. Starting off with the pros, it has a lot of power. Ecovacs says that the T30s has 11,000 pascals of suction, which is more than the X2 Omni at only 8,000 pascals. And in our suction and airflow tests, we found that the T30s did indeed have more suction than the X2 and more airflow. In fact, its airflow number was tied for the highest score of any modern robot vacuum out of almost 100 that we've tested. The T30s also had good debris pickup on both hard floors and carpets. It uses a silicone main brush and a floating brush housing, as well as a single side brush to sweep up debris. On hard floors, it was exceptional with everything from fine to extra large debris, and it was the same with carpets, where it was able to handle everything we put down with no issues. One big pro with the T30s is its all-in-one Omni Station, which, in addition to automatically emptying its dust bin into the included disposable bag, it also has 158-degree hot water mop pad washing, auto water refilling, and hot air drying. Its station also has something that's fast becoming a standard, which is an internal sensor that can tell how dirty the mop water is so that it knows if the mop pads need extra washing or the floors need extra mopping. It also has a tray that you can remove for easy cleanup, which is a newer feature but an important one. Its mopping ability was also a pro. It has 2 spinning mop pads which also exert 6 newtons of downward pressure, which we found to be remarkably good even with things like our dried on coffee and dried on grape juice test. It was also good with our various glow-in-the-dark wet tests. It also has a new mop pad feature called True Edge Adaptive Edge Mopping, where one of its mop pads automatically extends for better mopping coverage of edges and corners, which I found to be at least as good as some of the more expensive robots that have similar features. One interesting thing about this with the T30s is that you can choose to have this feature turned on pretty much all the time, instead of it just extending for corners and edges, and when that feature is enabled, it does cause the area in the middle of the robot's path not to be mopped at first, but in the app they suggest that that actually ends up being more efficient in the long run, though I didn't test this. Another mop hardware feature is its automatically lifting pads, where the robot lifts up its mop pads when it senses carpets so as not to get carpets wet during vacuuming. They lift up 9 millimeters, which is not as high as the X2's pads at 15 millimeters, and the T30's pads were more likely to touch longer pile carpets, but the T30 does have an option in the app to vacuum carpets first while the pads are still dry, and then return to the base to wet the pads to vacuum and mop hard floors. Another big pro is that the T30s has a great obstacle avoidance system, which consists of a 3D structured light system and 2 crossed lasers mounted in the front of the robot to detect objects. This is different than the top-of-the-line X2 Omni, which uses a camera as well as these other sensors to accomplish the same basic thing. But in our tests, the T30s was actually slightly better than the X2 at obstacle avoidance, though I did need to enable high sensitivity in the app for optimal results, which probably should be the default setting. Another pro was its navigation system. It uses a top-mounted LiDAR sensor as opposed to the internal LiDAR sensor which is on the X2, which I was not a fan of. It also has fast mopping, and it mapped our floor plan in under 5 minutes. It had one of the highest navigation efficiency scores that we have on record, way higher than average. There were some issues. For example, it had one run where it didn't finish part of a room. Also, it had another run where it got stuck for no reason that I could see, but overall it was exceptional with coverage and navigation in in general. The final pro I'll mention is the app features. It has virtual barriers, multi-level mapping, room and zone cleaning, lots of ways to adjust the bin emptying and mopping settings, 3D mapping, and a pretty advanced voice assistant. Pretty much everything that the top-of-the-line X2 has, except for all the camera-based features like live video monitoring, since of course it doesn't have a camera like the X2. Moving on to the cons. The first thing was that despite its amazing raw power, it didn't blow me away with the more practical tests. For example, with the Crevice pickup test, it was just about average. Also, in the carpet deep clean test, where we see how good it is at picking up deeply embedded debris like sand and carpets, it was a little below average. Not terrible, similar to the X2, but I was hoping for more. Another thing is that despite the T30s having a new feature which automatically removes hair from its brush roll, we found that this feature wasn't all that effective in our tests. To be fair, the way that it's supposed to do this is by sort of combing hair out of the brush over time, and our tests probably don't allow enough time for this to take place, so take our results here with a grain of salt. Another thing was its battery efficiency. Ecovacs claims the T30s gets 180 minutes of battery life on low power, which is lower than the X2 but higher than average. But in our battery efficiency tests, where we run it on all of its power settings on a fixed floor plan, it was a little below average. At the end of the day though, the T30s is all about its mid-level price range. You get a fully automated floor care system with most of the features of the top-of-the-line robots at a reasonable price with only minor sacrifices, though I would watch the reviews in the links below for deal breakers that I may have missed. All of the links in our description section are updated regularly to reflect our current favorite vacuums in multiple categories. If you don't know where to start, check out our latest vacuum buyer's guide video linked here. You'll also find links to the vacuumwars.com website in the description, where we post all the latest vacuum news, as well as much more detailed top 5 lists in multiple categories.